Hi, my name is Reggie Williams, and I'm one of the executive directors of Black Film Space. Black Film Space is a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting the careers of Black filmmakers. We host workshops, panels, and other community-building events that are designed to support Black content creators. We also have a membership program that offers discounts to filmmaking resources, free events, a filmmaking database, grants, a mentorship program, and much more. In the next episode of the Black Film Space podcast, we interview Fatima Elswify. Fatima is an associate producer at the Oprah Winfrey Network. We talk with Fatima about her path to becoming an associate producer, creating Christian content, and much more. This episode was executive produced by Reggie Williams and Sino Gibson, and edited by Leah Kirksey. And now, on to our interview. All right, Fatima, welcome to the Black Film Space podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here. Can you just tell us how you got your start within the film entertainment industry?
Sure. So a little bit about my background. I went to Spelman College and I studied economics and minored in management and organization. And for me, I'm from LA and entertainment was always around me, but I never had an interest to really get into that field because it just felt too LA. And my family is in the media business as well, and I just wanted to go a different route. And, after landing a corporate job after graduation, I realized that I was on a track that I wasn't passionate about, and I really didn't find my thing. And I will say the experience at Spelman, at an HBCU, I feel like the content and just learning about us and then paying attention, like, what is the best way for people to even experience what I did at Spelman? Like this enriching experience about who I am as a Black person, brought into mainstream. I'm like, because this experience is just so rare. And I'm like, I could see this living, like people just understanding their identities better through media and entertainment. And so it started that way, like this little desire, like, I think I want to create content. I think I want to just see myself on screen, see something that reminds me of me. And I kind of went down this crazy journey. I was a personal assistant to a celebrity just to kind of like get my foot in and see like where I fit. And then over time, I started to realize that unscripted was my lane, unscripted television, because, I'm a conversationalist and I'm like, I like real stories coming to life. Not that, scripted isn't real, but just more so hearing people's testimonies, hearing people's stories. And I just remember saying like, if I could just learn from someone like an Oprah, like talk show, like really understand that art. And I remember just kind of putting it out there. Like, I want to work for OWN. I want to work for the Oprah Winfrey Network. And I've landed a job there. I mean, that's a very long story how that came to be, but I've been there now for 5.5 years, like almost 5.5 years. And yeah, that is a short version of my story, how I got into the business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you literally manifested that.
Yes. And I remember the day because like I could even get into the struggle, which I know a lot of people don't talk about, like, oh, I got my dream job. And no, I had to take a lot of steps backwards and start over in my career, really, because the corporate job I landed, I was already at a management level. And I had to go all the way down to being an assistant to pursue a career in entertainment. And I remember I had to move back with my mom, and I saw like an old vintage, like Oprah cover, like Oprah magazine. And it was looking at that where I made the decision, like where I'm like, I think I'm supposed to work for her. I think, I'm sure so many people say that, but it was just this like knowing, like, this is what I'm supposed to do to get myself started. So yeah, in a sense, yes, I believe God allowed me to see that so it could come and manifest itself. Yep.
Yeah, that's admirable for you to like take that step backwards, you know, because I think a lot of us kind of want instant gratification and maybe have too much pride to kind of step backwards. But you know, being in the film entertainment industry, you know, it is a lifelong journey, and you know, you're gonna have to pay your dues. So that's admirable and very, you know, relatable for myself right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so could you know, you're an associate producer at the Oprah Winfrey Network. Can you tell us more about what your role entails?
Yes. So yeah, so even kind of on that same note of like having a vision is super important, because when I started at the network, I worked in a couple of different areas. Like I worked in development, and I worked in programming, and I had to pursue the production route. But like, this is where I say like God intervened. Very spiritual experience in the sense that where the desk I landed on was Oprah's executive producer's desk. And at the time, she was doing a little bit of development work. So my job was pretty much strictly administrative. And for me, I just knew I was on a mission bigger than them seeing me as a admin assistant. But I knew humility comes in handy, because when you're hired for a job, you need to do that job. Yes, you can have, and this, like, I love saying this, like, on different panels I speak to, because, you know, a lot of us, especially millennials, are super ambitious and we're capable of so much, but we come in entitled. I get why our parents say that. Because we come in like, I got an economics degree. I have this, that going on. I've interned for the biggest companies, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't hire you for that. So you have to prove yourself, do the job you've been hired to do. And so even though like going there, I thought I would be promoted a lot quicker than I was, just because I still had the millennial mindset. And I just kind of asked, I was just like, can I shadow you, to my boss? Can I shadow you on some shoots? Can I? And a lot of us also wait around for someone to just see us. Like, let me put the work in and let's be seen. But you do kind of have to ask too. Like, can I shadow? So I kind of like planted the seeds that I'm interested in the creative side of things. I'm interested, but I wasn't so entitled where I assumed I had a job in that space right away. So I shadowed, I started contributing, and these are things you do for free. You know, you start giving ideas, you start writing pitches, you start doing things. And before you know it, a job opened up as a PA for Super Soul Sunday, Oprah's show. And I was just like, you know, I know I'm doing this admin work, but I love to be considered as a PA, and I'll continue doing this job. So technically I was doing another job for free. So I was doing my admin work, but I knew that was my foot in the door. You know what I mean? So I started doing PA work for that show for free. And now I was in the space I wanted to be in. Now I'm in the producer's world, you know, starting as a PA. And I touched different spaces of own. I now produce, and this is something you may not know, I executive produce a show called The Same Room with the Shade Room. And it's a faith-based show. So everything I've learned working for Oprah, I'm able to apply to other arenas and other spaces. But I started at the very, very bottom, being a PA for Oprah, learning how she writes scripts, just reading other scripts, learning research, learning that process. And now I'm actually in the process of being promoted, thank God. So I will just,
congrats.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, I literally had to put my pride to the side and say, almost see it as an education than a job, and say, you know what, I didn't study film in school, so I'm gonna take that pay cut And guess what? Now I make good money.
Yeah, you made that back. You made it back and
you
more.
get it back.
Yeah.
It's a return, but you have to sacrifice a little bit, and that's the part we don't like, and that's the part that's not so fun in our stories, because you never know when that time period is gonna end, because it feels so long, but it was worth it.
Yeah, it's an investment. It's an investment of energy and time. You know, that's what it is.
Exactly.
So how involved is an associate producer when it comes to pre-production, production, and post?
So what's cool about our team, I know I'm simply talking about working for the Oprah, the Oprah Winfrey Network, but even in the things I produce outside of that, the teams tend to be relatively small. So even for our team, it allows me to touch every facet of production. So I'm involved in pre-production, which is a lot of research and a lot of talent finding, and also being relevant to culture and what people are talking about, and just like staying in the know, being relevant and being mindful of the brand that you're serving, even if you have your own agenda. You know what I mean? Like, just being mindful of like, okay, I'm here, and this is what they're going to take to. But I think everyone on our team brings their own interests. Like me, God is super important to me, and I'm Christian. Oprah's not Christian. You know what I mean? Or she believes in a lot of different things. And so I feel like if I could pitch a TD Jakes for a special, if I could pitch a whatever, that's like me, kind of my interests showing up in those spaces. And so pre-production is very much research based, and location finding and things like that, very logistical, and still creative. And then you have prep work, so preparing her script and topics and things of that nature. So a lot of reading, a lot of studying. And then post, as an associate producer, I am just, now that I'm getting promoted, I'll be more enthralled in that. But I wasn't touching post-production as much. And I think now I am starting to like touch that way more. That was like my insecurity, to be honest, as a producer. I'm like, I know how to find a really good topic. I know how to keep a conversation flowing really well. But when it comes to post and editing and refining an episode, that was my insecurity for a long time, and I'm finally getting that experience. So
Got you.
Yeah.
So I feel like I haven't worked in like the corporate world, and particularly as like a producer or anything like that, but it sounds very time consuming. Is it? And how do you manage like work-life balance?
Yeah, so just to kind of, I feel like my job is kind of weird, because our team, it's actually called like the Tiger team at OWN, we're kind of like a hybrid role. So while I get my paycheck from OWN, we're in partnership with Apple, because Oprah signed that deal with Apple. And so Apple kind of like pays half our paychecks, because we also produce, we pretty much are like Oprah's producers, for lack of better words. So we do a lot of different things. And during the pandemic, especially, that's when I'm like, oh, we don't have work-life balance. And I got to learn, like, we were like a news team. And that was like new experience for me, because when COVID hit, I thought, it was going to be like everyone else, shut down, figure things out. We were documenting the stories as they were happening, like things in Italy, and talking to doctors, and it was nonstop, where we couldn't even really process on a personal level what we were in, and so in a lot of ways, the pandemic was good, because the balance was, at least I get to be at home and take care of some home things. But I'm big on, even if you have to just make it work, still like pour into relationships and friendships, and continue to, sometimes I hate the word networking because I feel like I'm a personable person, so I don't network to gain things. I'm genuinely interested in other people, and I try to keep that open, because producing to me is not just producing. The reason I work for Oprah is because I have a genuine interest in the content she pushes out, and I only want to work on things of that nature. So for me, the reason there's a bit of balance is because what I take for my job, I'm able to pour into other interests of mine, and it's all aligned. So that balances me out, because it's not like I'm just pouring into my 9-to-5 job. I get to take that information and pour it into other things I'm working on, or my nonprofit, or ways I'm giving back. So I always say, like, and this is Oprah's word too, like being intentional, I think helps you with balance, because you don't even feel like you're off balance, because what you're working on every day aligns with who you are as a person. And I think a lot of people find themselves in conflict. And that is a luxury a little bit, because I had to work in jobs I just was not interested in. So I will say it's a little bit of a luxury, but it allows me to feel balanced, because it's not like I'm like dedicating my time to something that I need to free myself from completely. If that makes sense. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. In regards to, I'm really fascinated because you seem to be very spiritual and religious, and you live in LA and you work in the entertainment industry, so I'm kind of like fascinated with like navigating this industry, and also remaining consistent and true with your values.
I would say the way that I go about it, and that's a whole conversation, because I mean, I went to school in Atlanta. I haven't always been how I am today. I was definitely a big time, I'm not gonna say it like that, but partier, clubber, all that. And it's funny how things like still work out in your favor, because I would say because I'm 30 now, I would say from ages maybe 21 to 24 or something like that, I was really out here partying in LA. And it's just funny how even that network still pops up, and people are like, Fatima, I remember you from Greystone Sundays or whatever. And I'm not anti like going out or anything like that, but I did make a drastic transition in terms of like who I hung out with, and what I focus on. And I don't judge anyone. I'll start there. And I think that works in my favor, because I think a lot of times when people find Jesus, for lack of words, I think that it's part of like spiritual growth. You do remove yourself, because you kind of just need that isolation to just grow and find out who you are as a person. But I think people get comfortable in that isolation, because I think the purpose is God removes you from that to develop you, but he wants to put you back out into where you came from to be a light. And I think for me, I want to show up in every space. I don't want to, and it takes discipline, and it takes, like you have to be true to who you are, and you can still be influenced by the pressures of the industry and fitting in and things like that. So I get that part of it, but I also want people to feel comfortable around me, and know that regardless of whatever lifestyle you live, I'm not judging you. And I'm just going to show up with who I am and what I've learned and how God has changed me, and be a light in those spaces. So I think for me, it's part of my purpose, and how I see it is like, I'm supposed to show up in these spaces and be as much of a light as I can be. And that's part of what I want to do with the content I produce. And even what's cool, the show that I work on for the Shade Room. And look, I work for a show for the Shade Room. You know what I mean? It's called Where Faith Meets Culture. And the intention of that show, and I actually want to promote that show. Y'all got to watch out for the Same Room, because we're coming up with a new season around like August. And we want people to know, no matter your lifestyle, where you're from, we can all meet in this same room, so to speak, and talk about our faith. You don't have to show up one way. And I think sometimes when you have that religious mindset, you're not as accepting and loving of other people. And that's part of our mission with that. So yeah.
Got you. Can you talk a little bit more about the same room in regards to the vision and I guess what sort of market you're looking to fulfill?
Yes. So like when I think of the Shade Room, for example, just that platform, I'm like, those are my peers. Like the people commenting, that's like millennial pop culture. And so when I think of how I want to impact, it's probably going to be that age group and that particular demographic, if that makes any sense. And so long story short, my friend Stephanie, who is a pastor, she became friends with the founder of the Shade Room, Angelica. And Angelica found God while she already owned the Shade Room. And she was just trying to figure out, like, I own this platform. And she was kind of in conflict about it because she's like, now I know God and I have this thing. Like, how can I share my faith with people? Because the Shade Room doesn't really feel like a space where I could do that so freely. And so she would, like consult with Stephanie, and they came up with the idea to have the show, The Same Room. And even the idea of the same room is like anyone can show up in the same space, in the same room, no matter what your background is or how you look or your walk of life, your lifestyle. And so they came up with the idea, and I help with like that tagline where faith meets culture, because I think a lot of time when you think about faith, it's very isolated. You think of church people, church folks, you think of it being this showing up looking a certain way. And like when I got close to God, one thing that helped me in my walk is finding a peer group that wasn't like I used to think of Christianity as like, oh dang, like if I really give my life to Jesus, I'm gonna become a weirdo. Like that's how I would see it. Like I have to be so different and I have to not have the same friends. And then I found a church where I found a peer group where I'm like, oh, y'all got the same story as me. Y'all used to be in the same clubs I used to be at. It felt like, wow, I could get close to God without putting on a front. It's like I could show up as my authentic self and still have a close relationship with God. And I think a lot of people don't know that or have never experienced that. And I think the show will allow us to see, like, God wants us to show up exactly how we are. We don't have to fit some type of mold to be accepted by God. And so we've had people like Charlamagne on the show. We've had Kirk Franklin. We're looking to book more like rappers and people that you wouldn't even maybe like align with like Christianity at all, but they actually do believe in Jesus, and you'd be surprised to learn that, and have raw conversations with these people. So we have some good guests coming up in this new season, just to talk about what it means to have a relationship with God, and it doesn't always have to fit this church construct and this mold that we know. So
yeah, that definitely I like that concept because it I think it's very relevant to how a lot of millennials feel. Like it seems like the trend is that a lot of folks are spiritual, but not, maybe not so religious as our parents' generation. So it really feels like it fits into that, that trend.
Exactly.
I'm really curious to hear what you think about like shows that content in Hollywood that appeals to Christians or Christian values. And what I mean by that is if you were to, turn on your TV and either, go to basic television or cable or streaming platform, most of those shows don't really, at least from my perspective, and I'm not Christian, but they don't seem like they are aligned. They don't appeal to people who are like really religious and spiritual. Like there's a lot of, curse words and nudity, and it's, murders, and it's dark. And there's just not a lot of content that appeals to people with Christian values, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why Tyler Perry, as one of the reasons why he's so successful is that his content appeals to that sort of audience. Mm-hmm. And I find it to be fascinating that there isn't, in my opinion, there's not a lot of shows that appeal to people with Christian values, because this country is very Christian, it's very religious, particularly in the South. So you would think that Hollywood would make more content that appeal to these folks, but it's almost like they appeal to just like, it feels like a lot of content just appeals to like liberals in like New York and LA who, aren't that religious or spiritual. That's the vibe I get. And I'm curious to know if you agree with me, and just what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think that it's funny you even say that, because I think that's where my interest to even pursue this industry came from, because I'm like, there's a demand, there's a lack here, mm-hmm. and there's something that I'm hungry for. And to be honest, I'm that's why I whenever you get a chance, watch The Same Room, because we still have a lot of episodes that live on YouTube before the new season comes out. Mm-hmm. You'll kind of get a feel for our style and how it's comfortable, for lack of better words. It's not compromising to culture, if that makes any sense, but it's mm-hmm. more so living in culture without trying to just be so isolated. Like when I think about, I'm not trying to preach, but when I think about Jesus, like literally, he walked in culture. Like he didn't just stay in the temples. If anything, he called them hypocrites and wasn't happy with what they were pushing. He wanted the sick to be healed. He wanted people that never really felt love to feel love and things of that nature. And so that's what I want to penetrate. That's how I want to be used, is to be like, instead of just create, because there's TVN, to your point, there's Christian networks, which are beautiful and great, but how do we tap into the culture at large? And to your point, what's on TV now is what sells. Like it's more entertaining for it's sex, violence, all that. Like I just finished watching Breaking Bad. I get it. I just like that. So I get that we love the suspense and all that, and I believe that that's life. Life isn't pretty all the time. It isn't perfect. When you find God, my life actually got harder in a sense. Like it got harder because I had to be different in a world that's calling me to be a certain way, and I kind of want to be like everyone else because I'm human. I want to be accepted, and I think that the content that I want to see is where people actually see themselves, like can see that you can actually have a relationship with God and still live in this world and still battle the things that you're battling, the sin, the temptations of life. And I think that Tyler Perry, when I think of Tyler Perry, I think of my mom, right? Like mm-hmm. he speaks to our parents in a way where they see themselves. But what about us? How do we see ourselves in a culture that is changing so rapidly? We don't even know our identities at this point, because the messaging is, first of all, it's so much messaging. There's so much content. You don't really know. The groupthink of social media is huge, where we're just like, okay, I guess this is wrong. I guess this is right. This is politically correct. This is not. We're so confused. And I'm not saying I have it all right either. I just want to help lend something else where, and that's part of like OWN's mantra, so to speak, is like where Black women come to see themselves. Like I almost want believers to see themselves, or people that even have the inkling of like wanting a spirituality, to see like how can that show up in this world today.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds dope. That's really, really, really unique, and I think is needed. I'm all about diversity, not just with, you know, more Black people and brown people and Asian people, but diversity in stories and the way we tell these stories. So I think that's dope. In regards to the Meghan and Harry primetime special, what was your role in that?
So that one got me an IMDb page, so I was happy about that. But that one, so that was a long time coming. You know, our team, we even hire lots of freelance producers when we work on something of that magnitude. So very research intensive. Just from every angle, like you never know where Oprah's gonna take it. She has this art to how she maneuvers things, but it's really making sure that she has all the information. So my role was just helping in that, lots and lots of the research. And I would say that my like unique effort, or like within the group that worked on it, was to bring almost like I just knew before it even came out, like this is gonna be something for Black women. Like I just knew it, because I'm like, even after when you think of what happened to Meg the Stallion and just ways like we feel unprotected, I just knew that there was gonna be a messaging even bigger than the story itself, amplifying what it means to protect Black women. And I think that was like my unique angle, like when I would you know, send articles and things like that. So I was happy with how it all came together, because I feel like it just told her authentic story, but it also left people with a sense of like her voice was heard, you know. So yes, yeah. That definitely helped with a lot of the research.
Got you. Okay. In one of your interviews, you mentioned being sexually harassed in one of your former corporate jobs. How would you advise women of color who have found themselves in this space?
It's funny because that was before the Me Too movement that happened. Like, you know, before all of that. And I remember, and it's so funny because that was probably 2012 that happened. And I didn't have language. And it's funny coming out of Spelman too, you know, all Black women's institution. We were prepared in so many ways, like how to show up in any space. Like a lot of people even make comments about like HBCUs don't properly prepare you for the real world. I say, and this is my bias, I feel like it prepares you even more, in the sense that the lack of assimilation allows you to truly show up confidently. Like I know my worth, I know my education and what I have to offer. I don't have to fit this certain mold to show up, if that makes any sense. And so I felt prepared in that sense, but not as like a woman dealing with men in a sense. So for me, unfortunately, I don't mind sharing because I'm not disclosing any names or organizations. But he was a Black man, and that's the part that I don't like. That's why I don't like sharing that part. And I think he showed up as a mentor, or that's how it felt. And that was my being young. I didn't read the writing on the wall. I didn't really understand what was happening, but he did show me this extra amount of like attention. And I felt like because the program was primarily white, or mostly white, that he was just looking out for the Black girl. That's how I interpreted it. So I was just very open to the way he was doing some things I wasn't supposed to know. Like I was getting secret information about my ranking. Oh, Fatima, you're number 4 in the class this week. What did you do? You got to do this and that. And so I just took it as like, oh, he's looking out for me. So when he made certain advances, I was still kind of like, he's just being flirty. And like, even like growing up and, you know, around Black people, it's like, oh, it's okay if an older man flirts with you a little bit. I thought it was nothing, you know, like, okay, whatever. A little flirty here and there doesn't hurt nobody. And I think I also, like, I don't know what message I'm really trying to leave with this. I think I also carried myself in a way at the time where I kind of used my womanness, if that makes any sense. Like, and I didn't even know I was doing it, but the way I presented was like, I know I might get a little bit of attention for this, but I thought it was innocent. It was innocent because I was young, and I just thought it was innocent, not knowing I'm dealing with a really grown man who may interpret my kindness and laughter and giggles as more. You know what I mean? And so for me, when it happened, it really affected me and even my self-esteem at the time, because I was so young. I was 21. I didn't know who I was yet. And it made me question my worth. I was like, did I only get this job because of the way I look? Am I even that smart? Am I even that talented? You start going down this like hole. And it took me a while to get out of that, because that for me, it was a very transitional time in my life, but I didn't know how to see it. I blamed myself. I felt bad that I got him fired, even though his behavior was extremely inappropriate. I felt like I could have carried myself differently to not make him feel like he can do that. And I did blame myself. And so like when the whole Me Too movement came out, I understood why a lot of people were silent for so many years, because I think women, I don't know why we do that, but we take ownership of things because we think we could prevent it for whatever reason. It's almost like we make excuses for men. Like, oh, maybe if I didn't wear that, or maybe if I whatever. So I think it was definitely a learning that I didn't have language for. So I kind of like dealt with it in isolation. And so looking back on it, I don't even know if I fully like have advice for other women. I would just say, because I am proud of the fact that I reported it. So I would just say, even if you're questioning yourself as a woman, like, is this happening? Keep a record. I think that that's a safe thing to do, because sometimes you might even fear that you're misinterpreting advances. Keep it all to yourself. So for me, keeping a record, which I got that advice from another woman mentor, helped me see, oh, this man is very inappropriate. So when the advance was like blatant, I was like, dang, I have this record of all these tiny little things you did that led up to this big moment. So I would definitely say keep a record and find someone in your corner that can encourage you, because being silent, you just lose your power when you lose your voice. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Long story to explain a very weird situation, but yes.
No, it was that was very insightful, and you know, I think that a lot of people can take that advice and you know, use it to their benefit. I mean, hopefully they don't have to use it, but so since like the Me Too movement, have you felt like a shift in the corporate space around sexual harassment? Have you seen that? Do you see a difference between now and when you first started?
Oh my gosh. So I actually, it's crazy you said. So because I'm not disclosing names, I actually was harassed in another corporate environment again by a leader, by another executive, a white executive this time. And he, it's not funny. So I shouldn't even be laughing. And that's what it shows, even the culture I grew up in, where it's like, that's just crazy so-and-so. He's just a nasty old man. And you just like let it go. And I feel like I grew up like, Fatima, that's not a big deal. Because I will also say I've never been raped or molested, right? So there's a I won't say a lack of sensitivity, but maybe there is a lack of sensitivity because the advances have never gone too far where I'm like, whatever, that's just that nasty old man from down the street. And we act like it's not a big deal. And I think that's something big, especially within the Black community. So many things go unreported because of that silence that we have to break. Because people end up with serious issues as adults due to that. But I'm like, if they had a voice or felt like they could have a voice at a young age, you know, so much could be prevented. We could be healed in greater ways. But anyways, to that point about like, have I seen shifts happening in the corporate structure? There was a particular man. He was a leader of the company, pretty high up, and he made little advances towards me. And I say it's little but if I tell someone else the story, they say, Fatima, you should have reported, right? But he kind of like compliment me and say stuff. I'm like, oh, that's a little weird. Kind of like hug me and do things like that. And then one time you know that thing when people shake your hand and they like rub their middle finger, and you know what I'm talking about? Like,
I don't.
Do you know what I'm talking about or no?
I don't know what you're talking about. They rub
okay.
They shake someone's hand and they rub their middle finger.
When a guy does that to a woman and they kind of like rub the middle of your palm, and it means like, I guess it's like a secret code for they like to do you. You never heard
that? I haven't.
Okay,
I guess that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Anyways, little advances like that. And I'm like, did this just happen? But you see those subtleties where it could keep you silent? Because I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know what this means. But that was just an awkward moment. But he was looking into my eyes and rubbing the middle of my palm. Okay. I'm just gonna act like that didn't happen. All right, have a good day, sir. Blah, blah, blah. Ha ha. And I'm also kind of just a friendly person too, which, you know, like I try not to see the worst in things, which I'm learning to open my eyes a little more. Anyway, as soon as all the Me Too things surfaced, I saw a complete change in his behavior. He wouldn't even look at me. Hey, how's it going? Hey. And I was like, oh. And it almost confirmed to me he was flirting, if that makes any sense, because of how drastic he interacted with women, how it shifted. So I will say, like, while I believe that there are men that have been falsely accused of things or may have grown up in a culture where saying sweetheart was normal, and I feel bad for those men because it has a lot to do with their upbringing, I think there are also men who use their power and know that they can put women in compromising situations because of it. And I think that was the perfect accountability check to shift how they go about showing up in the corporate space. So I think there's like pros and cons, but a lot of pros in terms of how to show up professionally and ensure that women feel comfortable. I saw it. It was drastic. It was really drastic.
Yeah. But were there like meetings, or like was there like something different within the company?
I think we've always had like our standard sexual harassment, whatever, like trainings online to just learn about what it is, how to report it. I think we continue with the standard practices in that sense. I just noticed a change in certain men's behavior. So I think it was like the because, you know, so much was happening in that time. I think there was this fear. And I think it was a good fear because people need to be checked, especially if you know you take advantage due to your position.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were definitely positives that have come out of it. Now, I do think there are opportunists and people that make up things and all that, which is annoying. But for the women that actually have experienced harassment, I think it was like a relief. Like, oh wow, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, with that, with any movement, there's, you know, probably going to be, lack of a better phrase, pros and cons. But I think the pros, you know, much outweigh the cons.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Tribe Collection?
Oh, so the Tribe is the Tribe Collective. We've actually been a little bit on pause, just due to being busy. And that's one thing too, when you have independent projects, but you're still trying to maintain 9 to 5 and working on other things, it's difficult. But that, I would say, like, that's my heart, in the sense that service is important to me. And I just have this thing with women. So it's even funny that, like, I think everything happens for a reason. The fact that I was sexually harassed at work, the fact that all that, I think it just speaks to women. Like, I believe I could speak to anyone, but I think there are experiences I've had that speak to women, especially young women, in a way that prepares them. And it's not just me, it's my counterparts. So me and my friend from Spelman, Stevie, started this organization with the mission to serve and provide content to young women that allows us all to heal. Like, healing is like the underlying theme. And so we've had service things we've done. So even, like, my thing is, I believe a lot of us heal by serving. Because you know how sometimes, like, people go, oh, they almost see, like, if you're serving homeless people, for example, you're serving them food, you think it's all about you being a good person and serving those homeless people. But something changes in you when you develop a heart of service. Something heals in you when you're able to extend yourself. So as much as our hearts are for the homeless, I also have a heart for the people that are there serving the homeless, because I believe it takes them out of the complications of their life, and they're able to see other people. Because I think what keeps us stuck is when we keep looking at ourselves all the time. Like, me, how could I be better? How could I do this? How could I do that? While that's positive, it's conceited. It's self-absorbed. And I think a selfless mentality is also a huge part of healing. And that's kind of like the foundation of Tribe Collective. So, like, and I'll tell you a little about the inspiration. My dad, he's from Egypt, and he had a company called African Express Tours. And I always remember I was at Spelman, and we went to Kenya and Egypt, and we took a group of young kids from Crenshaw High School out here. Kids that wouldn't be able to have those experiences, and we were able to, like, get money, and we took this big group. And I just remember, like, a light bulb went off when we were, like, on these tours, and I was having these deep, meaningful conversations with these high school students, but it was almost like they were able to think outside of the community they came from and see other people. And I think that's when the light bulb went off, where I'm like, I want to do, so the dream for Tribe Collective is to do these retreats overseas where people get taken out of their element, and they could go to other countries or different parts of the world, and they can serve other people. But while we're doing that, we're also having these workshops where we talk about ourselves, we talk about our upbringing, we talk about goals and things we want to see change about ourselves. But when you're taken out of your element, you're able to have a better view of the world, instead of just your very small, myopic view due to your circumstances. So that's how I want to see Tribe expand. I could see content being a part of that, workshops, documentaries, just a space where people heal outside of their element.
Got you. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's like a big dream. That's my big dream. Yeah.
This is the nonprofit you were referring to earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. And you all, and what sort of content? You said you create content. What can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. So like, I don't even think I mentioned this, but like, even as I talk about like, I knew I wanted to get in the unscripted space. Documentaries. I love documentaries. First of all, I just watched Muhammad Ali documentary yesterday. I want to create content where the documentaries speak to healing and like issues that aren't really talked about. So like when we're conducting these workshops with young girls, through like the documentary work we do, you also leave with like a lesson, a feeling. So it's almost like we're going to use our documentaries as educational pieces within our workshops. I already have like one particular idea. I'll even say it. I don't even care because I know no one's going to understand what it is until it's created. But it's going to be about sex. And I'm going to create a documentary, and it's going to be about sex in a way you've never seen it. And not like an overly religious perspective. It's going to be very interesting. And I believe that these educational pieces will serve the people within our nonprofit, but it will serve the community at large. And I could see it on Netflix or wherever, but it's going to be a big part of the workshops that we do within Tribe.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that if someone's listening to this, that they can get involved?
Right now, I mean, because we are on pause and we're just trying to figure out the infrastructure, I would say reaching out to me directly, probably on Instagram, is probably the best way, just because we are on pause. And we do have a page. We have an Instagram for Tribe Collective as well. But I'd say probably following me is the best way to see how that is going to come back into fruition in our plans.
Got you. Okay. So, yeah, I love the work you're doing, and it seems very unique, and I think it's adding diversity to stories and to Black stories. What are some of your long-term career goals?
Long-term career goals. Oh, you sound like my fiance. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, I sound like I'm interviewing you because it did sound like a very job interview question, but
no, that's a great question. So I realized for me, I actually, millennials, most of us, we don't stay at jobs that long, right? It's not even as appealing as it was for our parents. Like back in the day, you stay at a job for 15 years. It shows you're loyal. It shows you're a hard worker. Now, and I feel like in our world, especially with how rapidly industries are growing, it almost shows complacency. And I think that's why a lot of people jump to, like I have friends, start their own, go to Netflix, then go to like a social platform or go somewhere else, or go to a streaming service like Apple TV or something like that. It's crazy because I feel like I felt that that urgency a little bit where I'm like, okay, I need to stay competitive. I've been at OWN 5 years. That's weird for this industry to stay somewhere so long. But I've had such a multifaceted experience there. Like I've touched so many different things from like we recently touched documentary work, which got me excited because that's where I want more experience. But I still see myself there, which is crazy. Like I see growth, and especially because like I'm in the Oprah lane where I do all pretty much Oprah projects, but OWN is moving into the streaming world a little bit, and we serve Black women. And I'm like, how crazy it is that a whole network is committed to serving Black women. I just think that's so specific and rare. And like, yeah, we have BET, but it's just Black women. Like, I just think that's so interesting. And I think there's so much more opportunity, and the brand has evolved so much since I've been there that I don't feel stagnant. So I will say that I see myself at OWN for the foreseeable future. But in terms of like longer term goals, I see my independent filmmaking and my documentary work really happening. And really, it's about serving other people. Like, I want to put other filmmakers on eventually. I don't want to like carry it all myself. I want to be able to develop a concept and see someone else or someone bring me a concept and help, push them, but still within like this brand that even I'm creating, of this healing space and spirituality and changing the narrative a little bit. So I definitely see documentary work being my long-term thing for sure.
Dope. Awesome. Any advice or last words for our listeners?
Well, I'll say, because I know I jumped on so many subjects, and thank you. I feel like you're such a great interviewer, and I'm like reading more about the work you guys do, and I just think any space that's committed to elevating other voices prospers. Like, I think it's like a God thing. Just think that over Black film space, when you're about others and seeing others elevate and openly, I just believe God pours into that because it's not self-focused. It's focused on the advancement of other people. So I just hope you guys continue to grow and advance. But yeah, I would say even with all the directions that this conversation kind of went in, because I know a lot of creatives might be listening to this, humility has been my advancement point. And I would just say tap into what that means for you and having a clear vision. And so I think whatever process you have to go through to have a clear vision for what you want to see in the world, what you want to see in your work, I think everything else follows that. But I think a lot of us, without that vision, it's hard to maneuver in this work, in this space, because there's so many options. And you could kind of get lost in that. So I definitely say try to narrow in on like what you care about and what that vision is, and also the humility when it comes to the process of seeing that vision come alive. Because whatever it takes for you to learn what you need to learn, go for it. And if that means starting over, it'll all pay back. It's an investment in you. So, yeah, that's what I say.
Well said. Thank you so much for your kind words and your insight. This is a really fun interview, and I learned a lot myself. Where can we find you on the internets?
Yeah, so I know I have a Twitter somewhere. Don't follow me on there. I don't know what's going on with that page, but Instagram is what I pretty much stay glued to. So you can follow me on Instagram, Fatima.Elswify. That's ELSWIFY, Fatima.Elswify. And then I also encourage you to follow The Same Room, at The Same Room on Instagram. And that is the show I was mentioning that we do with the Shade Room. I believe it'll bless you. I believe you learn a lot. And you'll find our link to our YouTube of that show. So definitely follow The Same Room. And yeah, that's pretty much it. LinkedIn's always good too.
Of course. Awesome. Thank you so much, Fatima. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time and for thinking about me being a part of this. I appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.
Okay, you too.
Thanks for listening to the Black Film Space podcast. If you're interested in attending our events, becoming a member, or donating to our mission, please visit us at blackfilmspace.com. Also, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Black Film Space. Subscribe to our email list and podcast. All right, peace out, and see you soon.